long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away, two powerful Jedi Knights were driven against each other by a wicked and conniving mastermind. Will our heroes overcome the evil Chancellor Palpatine and stop him from ushering in the rule of the Galactic Empire? Well, no. But they will take you beyond the medium. Episode 11. 20 Years of Missed Potential. All right, welcome back, everybody, to episode 11 of the Beyond the Medium podcast. I am once again very honored to introduce another good friend of mine, another guest on the podcast. Please say hello, Parker.
Yeah, I'm here to talk about Star Wars. It's a franchise that's been pretty important to me for most of my life.
Awesome. So, much like Elias with Oblivion, Parker is a very avid Star Wars enjoyer. Felt like he had a lot to say about this movie and the series in general, so we're happy to have him on. I'm also very happy to welcome back my co-host, returning from his drunken bender with Jeffrey Dean Morgan. It's Chandler.
I'm back, bitches. Yep, good to be back.
Yeah. Did you have fun on the party yacht?
Oh yeah, dude. Met loads of people. Even met Robert Kirkman. Had some decisive things to say.
He said it was no hard feelings.
No, me and JDM are not on speaking terms right now. So. Yeah.
And so you come crawling back to the podcast, huh?
I mean, when you say it like that,
Man, spent his whole shorts check. Well, all right. Well, we're very happy to have you back regardless. Today we're going to be talking about Revenge of the Sith for its 20th anniversary. Just had that, I think, at the end of May, so we're a little late to the party here, but that's kind of on brand for us. So, yeah, this is a very interesting movie to me. It's a movie I've seen plenty of times, and I think the last time I saw it was probably somewhere around 20 years ago, before we did our rewatch. So, I have a lot of interesting opinions, I think, that I have developed, probably that most people aren't going to agree with, but that's also on brand. So, but let's go ahead and just start talking about the movie. So before we actually watched it, we watched the Battle of Coruscant from the Genndy Tartakovsky Clone Wars cartoon. Really, really cool lead-in to the movie. Really impressive art style. I feel like that can be said for the entirety of the cartoon. But what did you guys think about watching that before the movie? And do you feel like it added anything to the experience?
I'm gonna go ahead and take it. Oh, sorry. Actually,
no,
Parker.
go ahead.
No, Parker.
Alright.
By all means. By all means.
Yeah, no, I thought I genuinely enjoyed it. I think it sets the scene really nicely for everything going in. It introduces you to like powerful characters. I mean, you get to see Grievous actually be cool and threatening, and that really helps, set him up for when he's, dueling Obi-Wan and all that stuff later on. And it's just a fun watch. So I definitely think it adds to the experience.
And what about you, Chandler?
Yeah, like Parker said, great tie-in, shows you General Grievous at his best in the entire series. I mean, combat-wise, there wasn't anything like that elsewhere in the from what I'm aware of the Star Wars series. But the biggest takeaway for me was General Grievous being a literal threat to Jedi, even though they have the capability of Force. Not only that, but the Jedi are pretty fucking badass in this movie. Seeing Mace Windu being an absolute goddamn beast on the Battle of Coruscant.
And the clones too,
And the clones. Yeah, the clones being just fucking ruthless machines. And Yoda having the little animal mount. That was badass. I don't know why they don't have more of that. I like seeing Jedi, ride on animals.
Yeah, he should have been doing that on Kashyyyk, dude.
Gives you an explanation of why General Grievous has to cough until
That
they
shit got
retconned it.
retconned.
Yeah.
But it was so cool at the time.
It was a very cool lead-in. I really like that part at the end where Anakin cracks his knuckles as they walk towards the spaceships, as the music like swells and you get that iconic theme. It was very cool. Very cool little like 20-minute like teaser to the movie. Moving into the movie itself, 20 years of different perspective. We open in on the Battle of Coruscant, right? Which is this gigantic, massive, very visually impressive, especially for the time, space combat scene, right? Which, Parker, you pointed out something that I hadn't really thought about, which was the level of effort that went into not only the visuals but the sound design as well.
Yeah, no, the music just it fills the room, especially like the Foley work and everything, every blaster shot, every explosion, the sound itself is just so high quality that
When
it
the
immerses you
spaceships
into it.
like arc and turn, and it makes that like
Mhm.
wow,
Yeah,
just
yeah, no,
they
it's
really
really
captured
good.
that like sci-fi like Star Wars has a very I think kind of specific like soundscape to it, like with the way that the blasters sound, like the ignition of the lightsabers, the whir of the spaceships and stuff. It
Mhm.
really is like something that you don't notice that much as a kid when you're watching it. But as an adult, you can really appreciate the level of artistry, craft, and effort that went into just designing a scene that is just meant to sort of open the movie up on like a big bombastic fight.
I think it definitely succeeds on that.
Right. So, uh, this is also like the movie, for as much as I do praise a lot of its artistic aspects, the movie also immediately runs into like logical issues and stuff with the story, like the fact that their shield generator for the spaceship that they're trying to board is on the outside of the spaceship. Doesn't make a lot of sense. The fact that the Republic is firing on the ship that Chancellor Palpatine is being held on doesn't make a
Don't
lot of
worry.
sense.
Don't worry about it. The
Yeah, don't worry
Master
about that.
Master Jedi Knight Anakin and Master Obi-Wan Kenobi's got this. They always do.
Yeah, they're just gonna
It's
escape before we blow it up,
yeah,
obviously.
Yeah,
yeah.
as
No
you
one
do.
thought. Yeah, no one in Star Wars has thought about putting the generator outside of the ship.
Even though in the last movie, when Obi-Wan and Anakin pulled up on Dooku, he clapped them immediately.
No, they have 0% chance of failure. Don't worry.
I'm twice as strong as we last met, dude.
Yeah, and he was a Padawan.
Yeah.
He was a Padawan.
Now he's a knight.
I mean, he does kill his ass, so I guess so. I want to say I really love that front flip that fucking Count Dooku does when he walks into the room too. I forgot about
Oh,
that.
the absolutely unnecessary stairs to the right.
Nah, front flip
It-
over it.
Well, it's okay. He's an old man. It would be safer for him to do a Jedi jump flip instead of go down the stairs. He would
I
immediately,
guess so.
I guess.
yeah, he would immediately die if he went down the stairs.
I do think it's thematically appropriate for in the original trilogy, he absolutely would have just walked down menacingly. But because this is the prequels, we're just gonna front flip.
Yeah, it
and
has
it's
to
gonna
be
cool.
over the top action,
Over the
right?
top.
So that he
Yeah,
has
we
to
have
front flip
very
into the
speedy.
room.
George Lucas said,
we have CGI. Go ahead, Christopher Lee. We're
Mhm.
gonna have you do a jump flip
Do a
back up.
do a fucking front flip.
Go ahead, do a front flip. It's gonna be really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they beat Dooku, right? Or well, I guess Anakin beats him because Obi-Wan just gets fodderized immediately. And then you have the part where Palpatine is like, kill him. And Dooku just very chilly decides not to just snitch on the entire operation before he dies.
I love how he looks over to Palpatine and
he's
then
like,
looks
what the
back at Anakin,
fuck?
and he's like, and then Palpatine smiles at him. And it's like, if only if Anakin was more observant.
Yeah.
If only
for
he was
real.
more. I'll be like, wait, what? What the fuck is going on? What?
He's like,
Why
"Wait,
did you look at him?
why are you so evil, Chancellor? Also saying, leave Obi-Wan's body behind or we'll never make it.
Yeah, think about it. He's like, no, he's my master. We've been through this, through all these things together. I can't leave him behind. Be like, why? What's up with you right now? What's up with the switch up?
Yeah, he makes
What's going on?
like
he makes very little effort to concede his evil intentions, doesn't he?
Oh, Anakin.
yeah, no. By that point, no, not at all.
Anakin, what if I need you to carry me, Anakin? That would have been my play if I was
Give me a
Palpatine. He's like,
piggyback ride.
right. He's like, well, Chancellor, that you make a good point.
But
But
he
what if I
wasn't
use the
even
Force?
like injured or anything. He was just like under some stairs.
That
Oh,
could have been an interesting take, though. Would have been like having Palpatine limp or something and be like, Anakin, you must carry me. You
Anakin,
can't carry us both.
Anakin, I have arthritis. I don't have the medication with me. Please, Anakin,
Oh my
help me. Yeah. So Palpatine definitely not being evil.
Yeah. They clap up Dooku though, and then they get captured by Grievous. And Grievous is like Grievous, as cool as he is such a pointless character. And the only reason he exists, and this is documented, is because George Lucas just wanted a big badass droid commander. And it's just an excuse for Obi-Wan to like be on another planet while the Palpatine shit is happening, right? Grievous is like a striking visual design, but that's it. Otherwise, in the movies, he gets like 5 minutes of screen time and then he dies in one of the most underwhelming fights.
I'm gonna correct you here real quick. You said movies. That's being super generous. He's
That is
just
true.
in one
He's in
goddamn-
he's in a
the
movie.
singular
He's
movie.
yeah, and the entire movies he is in just one of them, and barely for like 15 minutes.
It's less than that. It's significant. It's like
And
5 minutes.
he basically loses every fight he's in.
He runs away 2 or 3
The
times.
first- yeah, let's give him credit. He only had one fight, and that was it. The rest of them, he had the cool fucking droid guards deal with it.
I will say,
Well, he ran away.
blowing out the window on the spaceship would have been a Giga Brain play if they didn't have plot armor, because they would have just died immediately.
Yeah, no, you are absolutely right.
They would have
But
just
no,
got
they're
sucked
Jedi.
out and
Yeah.
froze, bro.
But they're Star Wars characters. They could breathe in space for some
Yeah,
reason.
they have force magic. Don't worry about it, man.
They had they also could have force speeded out the room, but we're not going to talk about that. That never happened again. So,
Or they could have used the Force to put the glass back together.
like, don't worry about it, okay? Those things weren't thought of yet. But yeah, man, it's just going through it, it's just like you notice so many of these little things, and I just think that just to take a break from the play-by-play that we were kind of doing, just rewatching this movie after so many years with the perspective of an adult opened my eyes to a lot of things, both positive and negative. And I think most importantly, right, the anniversary viewing and the popularity of Star Wars kind of coming back around because of that, at least for this moment, kind of reignited a small part of myself that really enjoyed Star Wars when I was younger. Because there are many aspects of Star Wars in general that I think can be appreciated in a vacuum. However, when you take it all in at once, you're left with this feeling of incompleteness or disappointment because the good moments are scraping up against the ceiling of being great, but then there's like bad dialogue or really obvious logical inconsistencies or bad pacing, and it just buries all that cool shit in this massive tsunami of missed potential.
Drum roll, please. Yeah. Going back on this, there's a lot of the cool scenes you remember and you can just watch on YouTube and get it, just in the same kind of digestion. But then you have to go through all this fucking slog. And during our viewing of the movie, I slept through it fucking twice. It's a long movie.
Yes,
and
he
there's
did.
a bunch of
He did
shit.
fall asleep twice during our
There's a
viewing.
lot.
Yeah, but
And I'm
you
like,
have narcolepsy, so it's fine.
pretty much, dude. Yeah.
We
There
were
was
also
one part.
drinking a little bit, but
Uh,
whatever.
But whatever. It's the movie's fault. I'm sorry. I couldn't
It's
sleep.
the movies.
It's the movie's fault.
No, but
Hey man,
you get what I'm saying though, right? Like
Yeah.
the movie is iconic. Let's not argue that, right? I mean, when meme culture like began in the early 2000s, almost every line of this movie is a quotable,
Yeah.
The dark side of the Force is a gateway to abilities some consider unnatural. Hello there, General Kenobi. Your lightsaber will make a fine addition to my collection. All that shit. All that shit, right? So even
It's not believe-
it's like there's this give and take with it though, because even though that the dialogue can be super corny and poorly written in a lot of scenes, there is this like weird charm to it in that it's kind of shitty in like a charming way, you know? It adds a
I-
bit of levity to what is otherwise a very depressing sequence of events.
I think
Yeah.
the best way to describe it, because I kind of disagree with you on some points. I do think there's some missed potential in the movie. Honestly, could have been longer, but it would have suffered for that as well. But I think what it boils down to is the movie's fun. It's very fun, and it presents things. Its presentation is very tight knit for the most part. I mean, the CGI, not always, but for the most part, held up decently well. Like we talked about with the sound design earlier being very strong, and like fight choreography is fantastic. It
Mhm.
presents everything in a very fun package that when you're watching it, you're just enjoying it. I mean, we were laughing a lot, we were just chilling, we were just having a fun time with it. And I think that's what makes it such a strong movie.
Yeah, the biggest takeaway from this movie is it's cornball, shit, and I love that. And this movie has plenty of it, throughout the sequences, the parts that I enjoy the most. You know, the biggest being, the fights. Maybe not the Anakin and Obi-Wan being, cornball, but definitely being the Yoda versus Palpatine one being the absolute pinnacle of shit.
So
Part of the movie.
sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but the fights are really cool, yes. But I do think there is something to be said about some smaller parts of the movie that, like I said, I didn't notice as much when I was younger, but we kind of left off right before the split where Anakin kind of starts spying on Palpatine for the Jedi Council while Obi-Wan goes to deal with Grievous on Utapau, right? But let's remember when they had that conversation, right, while they're sitting at the opera house, none of us said a word during that entire exchange
Yes, that
I,
was
I was
completely silent.
I
We were
was
just
getting
because it was awesome.
Yeah, I
Mhm.
was I was getting to that point where I love how the movie can be cornball, but there's a lot of parts that I do genuinely like. This is really fucking good. The opera scene being fantastic. Darth Plagueis the Wise. The scene where Anakin is waiting in the Jedi Master Council room and he's staring into the distance and he has that moment to himself and it goes back and reflects at Padme. That's also fantastic, and many more that we're going to talk throughout the entire episode. But those two were being, the most emotional, intriguing ones that I could pick out at the top of my head right
Yeah, that scene where he tells him to go wait in the council room was like a scene that I kind of deleted from my memory as a kid because it didn't involve a lightsaber. But
now. Right.
man, it like such a powerful scene that is almost perfect. They kind of ruin it because they have, Palpatine's like voiceover like it's an anime, like you don't remember what he just said like 5 minutes ago. But it was so close because like the very beginning of that scene, right, is just Hayden Christensen staring off, but like his expression tells you everything about how he's feeling, and that goes back to the sort of show don't tell that I really liked about the Gendy Tartovsky cartoon.
Yeah, no, it was very well done. Like the scene was well shot, and Hayden Christensen really carried that. Just like you said, the show don't tell, and there's several scenes like that just really show that they cared about the movie they were making. I think also shows throughout.
Yeah, I agree.
Also the explanation, the the reason behind why there isn't a whole bunch of fucking Jedi running around Order 66, an almost perfect scene. And I think anytime that Order 66 has been expanded on, it's been getting better and better. But seeing the source of like all these Jedi just get massacred on the whim uh by their clone troopers is super devastating. Not only to like, the literal you know, in universe story, but to, people, seeing like, oh, Jedi are badass, like the generals, and they just get gunned down in the most horrific way possible.
Yeah, because they can't
Poe
fight a
Kloon,
whole army.
yeah, whole,
Especially a whole army that they trust have been fighting with. I mean, it'd be like if your brother just like turned on you and shot you in the back.
for no, like out of nowhere, like
Yeah.
shout out to my boy Plu Koon getting fucking gunned down in the airship.
And
I
fucking
was throwing,
exploding.
I was mad seeing that again. I fucking I was throwing fists in the air.
Well, we
Now-
talked about.
Yeah,
We
but okay,
talked
the reason
briefly.
the
Oh, go
reason
ahead.
that he's I'm sorry. The reason that you're as upset about that as you are, Chandler, is because you have the information about his character from the
Yeah.
Clone Wars cartoon, right?
Yeah,
which
no.
came out after the movie, you know? So
Hmm.
it I think okay, this is kind of going off on a little tangent, but I'll try and keep it short because I want to go more into the movie itself and then talk more about Star Wars as a whole later. But just having the extra information from like the Clone Wars cartoon adds a lot of like depth to the character because I don't think Plo Koon even fucking talks in the movie.
Hell no.
No, he does not say a single word in the regular one. It was what I was. You brought up the exact same shit I was going to.
Mhm.
Like the escape pod scene from the Clone Wars
Yeah, not to
TV
me.
show,
Not to be.
where he's like,
I-
"Yeah, I care about clones," and then they just gun him down like a dog.
Yeah, that's the issue with Order 66 being like the most dramatic and terrifying thing in the Star Wars universe at the initial release of it is that you're seeing all these Jedi die in a horrific way, but you don't know who the fuck they are. They have never said a goddamn word. So it's playing, the beautiful scene or music orchestrated by John Williams, and you're supposed to feel something, but you only feel something after getting the context of who these Jedi were by consuming other media afterwards.
Yeah,
Instead
media
of,
that came out later too, though, you know. So it's like
Mm-hmm.
it's and also written by a different guy. So in a way, it feels kind of disconnected, and to me, that's like that hurts because it feels like it doesn't matter. It's like you had these ideas to expand upon these characters in like this prequel stuff, but it also doesn't completely align with the vision that the original guy laid out. So it all feels kind of not put together well, if that makes sense.
yeah, it's in there to have a dramatic, reasoning of why there's no Jedi in the original trilogy, and that Obi-Wan and Yoda and Luke are the last of the Jedi, except not anymore because context of
Yeah, all the other people that survived afterwards somehow.
so
the-
yeah somehow.
I mean, when you think of it, it's like they tried to kill like what a few thousand or whatever. I feel like there were a lot of Jedi that they tried to kill, and there's maybe 100 who survived. A galaxy spanning order, only 100 lived. It seems excessive because we keep seeing their like badass stories, but it also makes sense. Like some are gonna slip through.
Yeah, that's completely fair, but
That does make sense. However, at the same time, there's like
It undercuts it. Yes,
it does.
Yeah,
it
from
undercuts
the
it because in the original trilogy, it's like there's like 3 Jedi left, and then by the time Yoda and Ben Kenobi die, it's just Luke.
It's just Luke, but now we've also got.
Ahsoka Tano
I
also
yeah,
survived.
Soko is
and then
really
the
up
shit
there,
with
and
Ezra-
then
the Mandalorian and the Darksaber, and like I mean,
yeah, with,
I know he's not a Jedi, but there's still just way more shit going on than there was ever like planned to be, which is
Yeah.
kind of goes back to the point that I was making. Is like they expanded upon stuff that like never had the intention of going deeper than it was, and so when you go back and watch the movie, it's like it feels like somebody wrote like fan fiction material about a character that didn't actually do as much as you see that they did in like the Clone Wars cartoon or whatever.
well, here's the thing. That actually happened. The fan fiction was done by George Lucas. He was like,
I want to have a cool alien that wears a mask. He's got these weird tentacle things that connect to the mask.
But George Lucas probably didn't put much more thought into Plo Koon's character than that idea that you just
"Oh yeah,
said.
he just had a cool aliens." He's like,
It wouldn't be cool to have an alien named Kit Fisto, and he's got weird eyes, and he's got like
Green tentacles and shit.
green tentacles.
"George, what is it going to do?"
No, he's gonna look really cool. He's also amphibious.
But then you
Well,
look at like the legend stuff and like the Clone Wars stuff about Kit Fisto, and Kit Fisto's cool as fuck.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's also like, at the end of the day, this is not the movies are not a story about the galaxy. The galaxy is the backdrop. It is not really that important to the actual story. What is important are the main characters. It's the story. The prequels is the fall of Anakin Skywalker and the rise of Darth Vader, and then the original trilogy is Luke's story. It's his hero's journey. The expanded material, I feel like, adds context that in general, I think benefits the story more often than it harms. Like we were saying, with the context of who we know Plo Koon was, yeah, he doesn't get a lot of screen time in the movies, but now he's a fully fleshed out, really interesting character, and his death matters. When we see Ayla get gunned down by her clone troopers and like continually shooting at her body because they didn't want her to suffer, and that was context we got later. It adds to the story in my opinion.
Parker, I'm so glad you said her name because I was just going to call her the blue chick with like the weird tentacle thing.
The blue chick.
Blue chick.
I get what you're saying, Parker. I don't think the argument though is whether necessarily it benefits or harms the story. I think my issue is more about the fact that it's inconsistent. You know, I wish Plo Koon or Kit Fisto or whoever were developed characters in the movies, and then the information that you get in something like the Clone Wars could have been additional material that expanded upon them further. But as it stands, it's like it almost feels like these are two different characters written by two different guys because they kind of
But
are.
yeah,
They
I
kind
think
of are. Yeah.
I think the issue is trying to balance, all these other Jedi when you need to focus on Obi-Wan, Padme, and Anakin. It'd be very hard to juggle those characters.
Yeah,
And
they
even
kind of suffer the
Yeah,
lack of screen time because of that, I think.
yeah, the movie would suffer if it took time away from them. I mean, it already feels like we do too much in the movie, and spending more time developing these characters. Maybe if they had been introduced in like the Clone Wars, but even then, the story is all about Anakin, and that's the focus of the movie, and I feel like the movie would suffer greatly if it did develop these characters.
I guess
But I get what
that's
you're saying
it's like a benefit
as
of it
well.
being a TV show versus a movie, though. You know, just
Yeah,
having
they
that
can
extra
make
time.
yeah, they have the time to develop all these characters, and they had 3 movies. And Revenge of the Sith is a long movie,
This is true.
and it still feels like it doesn't have enough time to do everything at once.
Yeah, but I think that's what hammers home that feeling of missed potential to me. You know, is it's like
Mm-hmm.
even if you were to just take it in a vacuum of like it being Anakin's story, right? Anakin's story is also not the most believable with how it's depicted. Um, I mean, the dude goes from questioning whether to kill Mace Windu to slaughtering an entire temple full of Jedi and children pretty much instantaneously. And then you see him crying after he slays the separatist leaders, and it's like, why are you crying over them and not the innocent children you just butchered? Like, it was. Everybody goes back to that scene, right, about him slaying the younglings and stuff. But to me, that moment always felt so like it is brutal and it is very like it's like important to the scene, right? But it's also too much, I think. It was too much too fast.
Yeah. I mean, it goes back to what I was saying. The movie needed more time than it had, because they needed all of this to happen to get Anakin to where he would be. It's one of the issues you run into when you write, you start at the end of the story, and now you have 3 movies to get there. They already did 4, 5, 6, so you have to get there in 1, 2, 3. Whereas I really think it would have benefited from having like a 4th movie dedicated just to Anakin's story.
Yeah, I think so too. Or like a split between like a
It's
part
like a
1 and
part
part 2.
2.
Yeah.
Yeah, that could have. That wasn't really I mean, I wasn't very old then, but I feel like part 2s and stuff weren't much of a thing back then.
I think it started with Harry Potter mostly, if I remember right. I think Deathly Hollows was like the first thing that had like a second half of the movie. And then I think
Deathly
Twilight did it
Hallows.
after.
Well, actually, I hate to do. I hate that I know this, but Twilight, the book series had a two-parter thing. It wasn't just a movie thing.
Okay. So that's more of a 1-to-1. We're getting a little off topic though.
Yeah, we're losing the plot a little here.
Getting a little off topic. Let's go back to the movie, right? So we discussed that scene with them talking about Palpatine talking with Anakin about the dark side of the Force and how you have to be more open to, which I think if there was more dialogue like this, the movie overall would have been stronger. He was trying to explain a perspective about how like you could view the Force in its entirety and learn different things outside of just the dogmatic view of the Jedi, because he's right to an extent. The Jedi's views are very narrow and dogmatic. I mean, we were all cracking up at that scene where Anakin goes to Yoda and he's like, man, I'm having these terrible nightmares, Yoda. I think my wife is going to die. And he's like, give a fuck, I do not. Out of my room you need to be.
Yeah, which devolved into us doing Yoda impression.
For like an hour,
Yeah,
yeah.
from that point,
Yeah.
for the rest of the movie, in fact, we continue to do Yoda impressions. But no, it's very telling, and it's kind of the point of it. Is like, yeah, the Jedi were super dogmatic and just locked in their ways.
Also, hot take here, but I think the Jedi kind of deserved it. I mean,
No, they did.
Slavery
To an
out
extent,
in the
yeah.
in the Outer Rim. Anakin's mom still being a slave, but they brought him in, not stopping the slave trade.
Didn't save his mom.
So why wasn't he mad about that though? Why didn't that ever come up, bro?
Because
I
they
think
already
it-
dealt with. They did that plot kind of, but not really in the.
This Attack of the Clones.
Yeah, I know
Attack of
his
the
mom.
Clones.
I remember his mom got clapped up by the Tusken Raiders, right?
And
But
he killed all of them.
he could that could have been prevented if the Jedi got his mom off the planet before that.
Yeah,
But it's like it's outside of Republic space, right? So it's like whatever. See, what they should have done was they should have had him relate more to Dooku, I think. Because Dooku is like a really strong villain in that while he is a Sith Lord, his like whole view is based on outside of like the Jedi's view ideas, right? Which is like a thing that he had in common with his Padawan Qui-Gon.
Mhm.
They could have had him relate more to that and how the Republic fails a lot of its people, right? And Anakin could have been a good example of that because I mean they basically plucked him off this planet when he didn't understand what a Jedi really even was at that point or who he was. Like he was just a slave to a fucking alien. Thank you, Chandler.
Thank you.
We're going to talk about Watto, but yeah, let's keep going.
Talk about water. No, it's just it would have been nice if there was more of a believable reason, more of a established history of him kind of getting dissatisfied with how the Jedi run things, you know? It felt like it was all kind of crammed into this movie, and because of the pacing issues and like how you said they needed more time, it all feels really rushed.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with you. The without the context of things like the Clone Wars and all that, it feels very rushed. As a movie taking it just on its own, he goes very quickly, and there were logical points they could have taken instead. And they tried to hint at the darkness like in the second movie with him killing all of the Tusken Raiders. But
Well-
that's not shown, that's told,
Yeah,
Yeah.
you just hear about it.
really. You hear about it, and I think you see a scene, but we don't actually. I haven't watched the second one in a couple of years, so I can't remember off the top of my head. But I don't think we actually see him killing them.
I don't
You
believe
see-
so.
Nah, he kills a couple of them.
Oh yeah?
Does he?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I guess he kills a couple. It just doesn't feel as impactful as what we saw in like his fall here.
Yeah, see him pull, Anakin pull fucking Soul Calibur combos on fucking younglings.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you have to see that, you know, but it would have been that could have been a believable and really intense moment if the lead up to it wasn't like 5 minutes ago. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Literally, I think 30 minutes prior in the movie, maybe a little longer. it's hard to judge time passage in the movie when you're watching it
Yeah.
because it's nonstop.
Yeah.
But he was like saying goodbye to Obi-Wan, and he was like, you're my friend, you're great, we'll see each other again. And then Obi-Wan fucks off, and then
Like less than a day later, I hate you.
yeah,
Yeah,
like
everything-
less than a day.
Everything goes to shit as soon as Obi-Wan left.
I hate you. I hope you die.
I just love the part, like, just thinking about it, Palpatine be like, Anakin, we must kill the children too. What if they get
How
away?
did he convince him to do that, dude?
Okay.
Why
Okay.
after he killed Mace Windu or helped him kill Mace Windu, right? Why didn't he just grab Padme and just flee as far as he fucking could have?
Because he was convinced she was going to die because of nightmares.
And he's very persuasive.
But then he like chokes her out later.
Hey man,
Well,
sometimes you gotta
yeah.
put them in play. You gotta put your
No,
wife
no,
in
come
play.
on.
You can't fucking say that
Don't
shit.
fucking say that.
You're gonna get this podcast canceled.
Sometimes if
That's
you have the
fucking
force,
crazy.
you gotta force choke
Bro,
him.
shut up,
sometimes.
bro.
Man, fuck off.
Holy shit.
Yeah,
dog.
the switch. Anakin switches up like the switch up with Anakin's very crazy. I don't think I should kill kids. I think you should. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, no, I definitely think I think it would have worked a lot better if we did like that part 1 part 2 situation where like the end of part 1 was him killing Mace.
Yeah, and
And
like the
then
start of Order 66, right?
and the start of Order 66
You could have had a
cuz
whole movie about like Obi-Wan getting back to Coruscant and more like conversations with like Padme and more development, more time with Anakin doing things,
yeah, and like
Bro.
really I think something that could have helped it is if we developed some of those friends that he had, cuz the whole thing is that it is magic space stuff that corrupts you or whatever. And if we had seen him maybe fighting some Jedi he knew and that tearing him up and maybe saw the red eye or the yellow eyes before he even made it to the younglings, I think that would have also made it more believable.
Yeah, I agree.
Because we
then
could
he
have
would
bought we could
he
have
would've been
bought in that it's
super
like
gone
oh,
at that point. Yeah.
yeah, he was already gone when he got there. This is the confirmation, not what turned him. Like if they had introduced maybe like a third Jedi, like Kit Fisto, and if he had been really close friends or something, and then we saw him fight and kill him in like an actual duel, and that's when his eyes turned yellow. As just an example.
That's really hilarious that you mentioned that. Have you ever played the Revenge of the Sith game on the
Yes.
Xbox? So there's that whole fucking level where he's going through the temple and clapping people up. It's a whole level where he's like aren't there like characters in there too, like
I played it on the DS.
Okay.
So it was
That
a
might be
little
a
bit
different-
less.
that might be a
it's
different
little
game.
bit different game, but it does have some characters that you talk to in the temple, and they're like, Anakin, what are you doing?
mhm.
Or I always knew I couldn't trust you. Kind of
Damn.
things. And they have like conversations and
Yeah,
arguments.
I
before they
remember
duel.
that. But there's also like a Jedi general or some shit that I think you have to fight as well. I don't remember what his name is. I think there was like a lady too who had like 2 lightsabers. But there was like actual characters and stuff, and they're like him going through the temple was just a process, It wasn't like how it is in the movie where it's like, I mean, he has the admittedly badass scene where he walks up with the clones, but then it's kind of just over. You see him ignite the lightsaber in front of the younglings, but then obviously you can't show that. But
No, you
just
can't.
there was nothing going on there.
It again boils down to the biggest issue of the movie is that it needed to do too many things and have too much happen without having the time span to flesh it out with everything they wanted to do.
And it's just it goes back to that feeling of missed potential though, It's like there are so many cool scenes and cool exchanges and great performances by actors and stuff, but it's all kind of bogged down by the fact that I think that it needed to be more of a collaborative effort with other writers to help George Lucas out to maybe pace it better. Because even with the time, like you said, it's still a long movie, dude. They had a lot to get through, But even with what they did do, it could have been paced out in a way that was more believable. And I think what he needed was some help. But maybe, I mean, there's stuff about him like not being, he's very focused on what he wants to do. And there was that thing about that scene in Attack of the Clones with the droid factory where he just felt like adding that in at the last second, and the special effects team had to fucking do tons of crunch to get that to happen, just because he kind of had the idea last second.
Yeah, I mean, there's been times where his team has like reined him in. Recently we found out before watching the movie that Boba Fett was supposed to be the older brother of Anakin.
Yeah, I
So,
do remember
you know,
you saying that.
Yeah, I remember you telling me
so-
that before.
Yeah, I just while you guys were talking, I was just thinking about how much the Star Wars fans would have creamed their pants at the end of the end credits of the Revenge of the Sith. If there was like a part two, they would have just so much money would have been made. People would have lost their minds, and I'm it's very I get why he wanted to do it. He wanted a prequel series
He wanted
and
the trilogy.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he wanted
1,
to do
2,
trilogy.
3. But if you made part one and part two, it's not the trilogy. You're betraying the whole point. But there's just
It
a
would have
lot
been
of
a better
misunderstanding.
product for it, though.
Yes.
Yeah,
It would have made a better movie if it wasn't a full trilogy, but I mean, I could be wrong because I also another series I hadn't watched in a long time, but it doesn't Lord of the Rings do like a part 1 and part 2 for one of the movies?
That
And
I
it's still
think you
considered a
might be right.
trilogy.
I think you might be right. gonna
I'm
look that
pretty
up
sure
right
the
now.
last movie is a part 1, part 2, and it is considered a trilogy still.
In order of release. Unexpected. Okay, there's Fellowship of the Ring, Two Towers, Return of the King. Was there a part 1 and part 2 of Return of the King?
Maybe I'm just thinking maybe it was just in the box that
I think they're
had, but
just
I
really fucking long movies, dude. Because those movies
But I
are all like 3 hours
swear
long.
there were I swear it was on like 2 discs. Maybe that's what I'm thinking of.
Maybe it was separated by disc, but I don't think there was like a theatrical separation.
No, I don't think there was, but I think to make it yeah.
Well, so you kind of move past the scene where he goes fully into the dark side, right, very quickly. And then Obi-Wan gets back from Utapau also very quickly because everything just has to go. And then he's just on Coruscant. He sneaks into Padme's ship. She flies over there. They have that confrontation. You get some more really, really bad dialogue, really corny dialogue. And then you get that scene of Obi-Wan posing with his hands on his hips, which made me fucking bust out laughing.
it was aura farming.
He was.
I really,
He took
I,
a
on the
dump in the
contrary-
spaceship, bro.
yeah. I remember asking. I was like, "Do you think they like?" I was like, "Do you guys think that he took a shit? Do you think they could smell it?" I would. But anyways, on the contrary, I really do like the scene between Padme and Anakin. And one of the reasons why I give credit to the writing a little bit is because this is like a guy in his like early 20s, and he's purposely made to be super narrow minded, which makes him kind of fucking stupid for the most part, but it works because that's what George Lucas said, that he wanted Anakin and Darth Vader to be like super tunnel vision about things. So like the way that Anakin speaks, like a complete stupid idiot, and just focusing on like on one goddamn thing at a time. I appreciate, and I like how it goes with like Anakin shifting into like he's like, oh, I love you, and I could kill the Chancellor, and we could rule the Empire, and no one will ever challenge us. We don't have to run. She's like, man, what the fuck is going on with you? And then quickly shifts, and he's like, you're trying to kill me, and then he force chokes her out. I actually do that a whole lot. It just feels,
I think the specific dialogue is the problem, but I do kind of like the direction that it goes.
right. I like how-
It's a little bogged in the details.
It's set up well, but I think the execution is where it falls short. Like I see what you mean about like the way he's directed and how he's speaking, right? But it goes back to
It-
being believable to me, you know, because Padme is also like the one person that he cares about more than anything, literally pregnant with his child, as he is force choking her out. You know,
Yeah,
I understand
I-
the dark side is supposed
Like
to
I s-
be controlling his head or whatever, but I it's just not believable to me that he would immediately go to strangling her just because she's like, what is up with you? Why did you kill everybody?
well, the reason that I think it tries to imply, but again doesn't really do the best job setting up, is that he thinks, he thinks she's one cheating on him with Obi-Wan because he comes off the ship, and that's when he more or less starts that.
Is that really the intention? Because I
yeah.
never
I
read it
don't
that way.
think
No,
it was, but no, I'm pretty sure there's some lines that are like, he was here, you were talking to him or something, and then also
Well,
you
I
it
think
switches
the
to you brought him here to kill
no,
me.
no, no. I think
Yeah,
the implication
yeah.
is more that he's like in collusion,
Yeah.
like with the Jedi and stuff. Like he turned, because he straight up says like you turned her against me or something
That's
like
me.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that
there is that. Maybe it was the wrong wording on my part, but it's kind of
I
Obi-Wan
Yeah,
was
I-
clapping cheeks in the
Jeez.
spaceship.
yeah.
I took it as like the thing where like it's because they're here to put down Anakin and she was there to lure him out as bait to Obi-Wan to kill him. That's how I took it.
Yeah. I just think it could have been the dialogue and they could have spent more time setting that up.
The confrontation between him and Obi-Wan is generally just like it's got strong points, especially with the Mustafar duel, right? But the lead up to it was like so. I kind of get it because he sees him coming out the ship, right? And his head's not in the right place. I mean, he just killed a whole bunch of people. He's kind of going crazy in general.
He's crashing out.
So like I said, the framing of how it's set up is fine, right? Of him like going, "Oh, you're colluding with him. Everyone's out to get me," type thing, right? But it always goes back to the pacing. It all just happens too quickly to be believable.
Yeah, I agree. It's definitely an issue with it needed another 3 hours, which is crazy to say about a movie.
Yeah, but that's just not a feasible thing for you to do. So I get it, but at the same
Needed-
time, it's like
yeah.
it's always just gonna bug me.
Definitely the dialogue between Obi-Wan and Anakin's not very good. If you're not with me, then you're my enemy. Which
From my
obviously
point of view, the Jedi are evil.
don't make me kill you.
Yeah, no, dialogue has never been George Lucas's strong point. It's why I mean there's interviews of Mark Hamill say on record being like, I had to tell George Lucas I didn't want to. Nobody talks like
Yeah, people don't
this."
talk like that. I know the scene you're talking about. But it's weird because you have that juxtaposed to like the conversation he has with Palpatine at the opera, though, right? That's an extremely tightly written scene. Like the speech he gives is so decisive to the point, and like like
Well-
it's everything an exchange I think needed to be.
Well, it makes me wonder how maybe some of the actors were more like, we need to change this to fit the character, and maybe some of the actors weren't. I mean, I don't know how it was behind the scenes for Revenge of the Sith, but it would make sense.
I would
I could
imagine
think
they
of
probably
this.
didn't have much say, dude.
Yeah.
I have a good guess, with context. George Lucas was like,
I want to talk about a Sith Lord named Darth Plagueis. He was super cool, and he had powers to bring back people that he loved without dying. He could manipulate the midichlorians.
that's probably what happened. And he was so
The
goddamn
actor had,
focused on
like, free range or something.
that. No, that George Lucas was like, I'm gonna go ahead and write. He spent like an entire afternoon writing that part of Darth
Just
Plagueis
the
the
one.
Wise,
Yeah.
and then fucked. And he's like,
All right, we need to go ahead and finish the rest of the movie, guys. Let's go ahead and get on it.
Now we need to finish the rest of the movie. Yeah, I don't know. Like, because it's just weird though, where you have like these kind of weird pockets where like the dialogue can be really strong, or at least delivered well by the actor, and then you have stuff like with what Anakin says, where it's like, I don't know, the depiction can just be kind of cartoonish sometimes.
There's-
But
or
just
dialogue that doesn't matter how good of an actor you are, you just can't.
you can't deliver that
it.
well, right?
and direction too, like the delivery of Anakin be like, Don't make me kill you.
Needed
Could've
a,
it not
maybe needed another take, you know.
Me, maybe I'd take it. He's like, George, Hayden Christian's like, George, can we get another one? No, perfect. That's good. Let's go ahead and next one. I want to go ahead and get
Got
the
18 more
lightsaber.
hours of filming to do today. So
I want to get the lightsaber fight. Come on.
Yeah.
Come on, Obi-Wan, cut him in half.
well, speaking of the lightsaber fight, it's a pretty good lightsaber fight, all things
It is-
considered.
And I think, showing the sequences of, Obi-Wan and Anakin having their fight alongside Palpatine and Yoda having their duel. You have the two main characters fighting, and then you have the two most powerful characters currently in the universe fighting. Finally, you get to see after seeing the trilogy, the original one, and seeing this current one, you finally get to see Palpatine fight, and he's a goddamn psychotic, crazy beast doing crazy shit. And I love how you get two fight scenes to show how strong he is, albeit making in the previous fight making the Jedi Knights and Jedi Masters look completely pathetic and weak. But
Yeah, because he just fucking in there all dead.
Yeah, they were just like, we don't have time for this fight anymore. Just you have 1 minute, kill everyone.
Just get Mace Windu to the window as fast as possible. Yeah, but the duel between Obi-Wan and Anakin, as like bombastic and crazy as it is, and I do kind of like it being juxtaposed with the fight with Palpatine and Yoda. But then you think about it and you're like, why didn't Yoda and Obi-Wan pull up on one of them together? Like,
That would be.
wouldn't the smart move have been to just pull up on the Emperor? Because I don't think he could have taken both of them, honestly.
No, with how close that fight was, then again, it also might have been a situation of Obi-Wan got clapped the fuck up by Dooku's force powers.
True. So you think the lightning would just shut him down, maybe? I mean, that is potentially possible, but I still think just the most logical play would have been to try to eliminate the Emperor before he turns the entire Republic into an empire.
well, here's the thing.
Yeah.
I mean, like Anakin is renowned as one of the best Jedi Knights in the entire Jedi Order, and you have and so is Mace Windu, and Mace Windu pretty much won the fight against Palpatine. That's what I think. Like he literally had him on, begging for fucking mercy. So I feel like I definitely could see Yoda and Obi-Wan, cleaning up Palpatine and then going on to kill Anakin. I feel like the
Yeah.
Anakin fight would be a lot harder than.
Or they could have pulled up and been like, hey,
I-
dude, Palpatine's dead. So, like, you want to try and explain what you were doing now? And he's like, maybe okay.
I don't know. I've always read, going off what Chandler was saying earlier, I have always read the Windu versus Palpatine fight as Palpatine just setting everything up for Anakin to walk in.
Yeah, you think he let him win?
Yeah.
That is definitely. I've seen people read that scene the same way. I don't know.
It just, the timing just felt too right for the mastermind type of character that Palpatine is.
Plus, he just kind of sits up and then just juices the Force lightning right afterwards, anyway.
Yeah,
so
it just like goes way hard with it immediately after Anakin picks a side.
you would think if he was really that weak in the moment that he wouldn't have the ability to just juice it up and
Yeah.
then shoot him out the window. So maybe, but I still think the smart play would have just been to send both of them because they pulled up on the temple together. So
They're right there.
Yeah, I think it would have worked. I think that particular scene would have worked better if they were like, I'm closer to Anakin, you're closer to Palpatine in terms of distance, if they hadn't met up but did like a holocall situation.
or maybe
Or
Obi-Wan
if
left Coruscant before Yoda got there, you know?
Yes, or if there was maybe like some time sensitive reason why both of them had to be stopped right then and there.
Yeah.
Honestly, going back to that whole fight with Mace Windu or Palpatine, manipulated the situation to have Anakin show up on time. He was really betting on Anakin siding with him. What if that didn't work out? Because
Yeah,
what if
I
Mace
mean-
Windu was more convincing than Palpatine?
I don't know. I watched the Clone Wars and I watched him use the Force and just throw them all like a ragdoll. I'm still betting on Palpatine.
Well, that's in the Clone Wars. let's think about let's think about George Lucas in the moment.
We need to get Anakin to decide between Mace Windu and Emperor Palpatine.
That's what it felt like to me. Because
Yeah.
again, you're going back to context and be like, oh shit, he's fucking crazy with the current predicament.
But that's
No,
like
but I
saying,
get what
that's
you're
like
saying
bringing
in
up
the
stuff
movie.
about like Maul or Plo Koon from the Clone Wars in context to the movies too. You know, it's
Yeah.
like you can't really include that, at least in my opinion, because it was made afterwards, and it definitely. I still think Palpatine was definitely a really powerful guy. I mean, you saw him clean up all the Jedi Masters in like a couple hits, and there's an extended version of that scene where he goes even harder on them, and he's like got two lightsabers, and he's just going stupid.
This is the first time I'm hearing about that.
It's like a little behind the scenes thing. They have like a stunt double standing in for Ian McDermott. I'll send it to you later.
Wow, really?
It's pretty cool.
I couldn't believe it. I thought that was him doing the crazy demon fucking spin attack the entire time.
That's not what I meant, fucker.
Damn,
yeah.
dude, this is blowing my mind.
But so they have the conclusion of their fight, right? And another small thing I have a problem with is Obi-Wan letting Anakin burn to death instead of putting him out of his misery. Kind of feels fucked up. Fucked up to do as his friend. You know,
Yeah,
when you
that's
were
pretty
friends about
fucked
an
up.
hour ago, you let him die in the most painful way humanly possible.
No, this Anakin's got to learn to deal with the consequences. I mean, he did kill a bunch of children.
I mean,
He
this
kind of
is
deserves it.
this is true, but I don't think that's where Obi-Wan's head was at when he did that. Maybe he just didn't feel like killing him. I don't know. But
I
yeah,
think
he couldn't kill him.
that's yeah, I think that's what it should have done, is showing him like not being able to kill him. But that's not the scene we got. Instead, we got him stealing his lightsaber as he burned to death.
I forgot he
I'm gonna
picked up
take
the
this, by the way.
lightsaber. Because he hands it to Luke later. I forgot about that. That's so funny.
Yeah, no, he picks up his lightsaber as he's burning to death, screaming about how much he hates him. Just like,
I mean, this
no
thing
mercy
was
kills. Is that not a thing?
You couldn't like just at least force push him back into the lava, just so you know.
Just make it a little quicker.
Like, God, that's so fucked up, Obi-Wan.
I can't look at him, but I'm gonna pick up this lightsaber that's near molten lava, which should
While
be
he's going,
extremely. No, I think it's crazy how Obi-Wan casually picks it up, and it's it's the metal fucking lightsaber is near a fucking molten lava.
Look, don't worry about that, okay? Don't worry about that. He has to pick up the lightsaber to give it to Luke later.
Gotta pick it up.
But
and
I
dust
think
it
it's
off.
hilarious because even Palpatine pulled us up, and when he sees the state Anakin's in, he's like, "Holy shit!" He's like, "What the fuck happened?"
Oh, Master, save me!
And then they take him away on the tarp, and like the tarp has no cover, and he's getting
Oh yeah,
rained
with the
on and shit.
rain on. Ah! And they're like, and Palpatine's like, this is for his training. Make him strong.
As painful as possible, dude. And then you get the cool scene of him suiting up as Darth Vader. And I do really like the back and forth of Padme on the table giving birth while Anakin's on the table getting turned into Darth Vader. That's a very cool little back and forth scene to have.
It's supposed to represent rebirth and death.
Yeah. Thank you, George Lucas.
Welcome. I'm always right here.
I don't know if you guys got it or not. I just wanted to let y'all know that. And then the movie does have a very. It feels like once again the pacing goes too fast because it tries to set everything in place, where it is at the beginning of A New Hope, right? Because you see them like Palpatine already has the Imperial Army, the Death Star's already being built, which makes sense in a time scale thing because it's a whole planet-sized space station. It probably took a while to build. But it's like he just immediately pulled out the Death Star as soon as the Empire was formed, He was able to like filter out all the clones and get the uniforms and the Star Destroyers set up and all that, Whatever.
Yeah.
I guess.
I personally like to think there was some bit of time skip while Anakin was being brought back to life. Maybe
you have to
maybe a
assume so, I
coma.
guess, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is very quick, but also in the context of it just being its own, on its own movie, it is fast. But when you think of it like, this is setting up the other movies, it makes sense.
It does. It felt like it needed to. I don't think it needed to leave off exactly where A New Hope started. Y- like
No, it
we didn't
didn't.
exactly need to see Obi-Wan dropping Luke off on Tatooine with his uncle or whatever. Uh, and then seeing the Death Star and all that. Like I don't feel like all that was necessary. You could have implied a lot more by just showing the beginning steps of how the Empire was formed and stuff like that. But
I
yeah,
always took it away as being fanfare and be like, "Oh,
Yeah.
the clone armor and the Imperial officer gray outfits with the little goofy hat. Oh,
yeah.
and the Death Star. Oh shit.
Yeah, no, it's definitely meant to be like fan.
Yeah, I
It's like,
remember
Yeah.
"Ooh."
seeing the initial premiere, and as a kid, hearing people be like, "Oh, the Death Star! Oh my god! Oh, clone armor! It's the mouse droid! The mouse droid's so funny, guys! Holy!
Fucking
Oh!"
mouse droid. Oh my god.
I don't know if there was a mouse droid, but probably.
Probably.
Yeah.
And then the movie ends, right? So to conclude, I don't dislike this movie, but with the perspective of an adult's like eyes, it's just so unfortunate how much better it could have been. And I feel like you can say that about a lot of Star Wars media in general, right? Especially now. But this was supposed to be like the big end to the entire series at the time it came out, And even at the time of its release, people panned it for the same issues that we're talking about right now, 20 years later. Um, and yet, despite all that, this movie is very representative to me of Star Wars at its core, because Star Wars at its core is a story conceived from the burning passion of one fat nerdy dude with some really cool ideas. And through that passion, a franchise much larger than himself was created. 20 years later, despite the problems that this movie has, it still holds on to people's memories as being a, a cinematic moment. Like the end of this gigantic series of movies that spans back from all the way back in the 1970s. So there's aspects about the movie and Star Wars in general, I think, that still hold this very like warm, comfortable place in my heart. And I don't think it's just nostalgia, you know? I still think the concepts that Star Wars presents, stuff like just the Jedi Order, the Sith, the Clone Wars, all that stuff is still really cool and still has value, even if it wasn't presented in the best way. And it's not being preserved in the best way now, unfortunately, either.
No, I agree with what you're saying. It holds, like I said, it's something I grew up on, and it was my like I feel like every kid had their big series they were interested in, and this one was mine, and it will always kind of hold a special spot. And I don't, like you said, I don't think it's just nostalgia. It's hard to explain, but I think the movies are just they're just it's just fun.
I think I can explain it. The movies and Star Wars in general has swag factor.
Oh, I was going to say cultural impact.
I mean, that's true too.
I was going to say because there's a lot of references to Star Wars. You think about Star Wars, be like, oh, who's the most recognizable villain in movie cinema?
Palpatine
Darth Vader.
or
Oh,
Darth Vader.
I was going to say. I was going to say
Vader,
Darth Vader. Yeah,
Palpatine.
I'd say you could argue for either of them though, and that's
you're really
Yeah.
good.
that's
And that's
another point in its favor, right?
Mhm.
But just I think it's very sad to see the state of Star Wars today with all these different spin-off shows and stuff that feel like they're all kind of designed to just milk as much money out of this IP as possible, even though it's like its heydays really behind it at this point. But people still turn out because Star Wars is cool. And like Chandler was saying, it's absolutely factual that this movie and the series at large has extreme cultural relevance. It did a lot for movies in general, and science fiction. Um, and I still like, even with the new shows that don't have a lot to them, I still find small nuggets of things that I enjoy. As like pointless as it ended up being, I liked seeing Luke Skywalker pull up on the Dark Troopers in The Mandalorian. I liked seeing Cad Bane in live action with prosthetic makeup. I liked seeing the Obi-Wan and Vader rematch in Kenobi, even though it didn't serve that much of a purpose. It's just so unfortunate that so much of the cool stuff is mired by the fact that the people currently in charge of new Star Wars media can't see past their own egos.
All in all, the new series and everything else following, except a few selected few like Andor, but most of the series are just straight up. I had to get that in there, but yeah, it's such a pain in the ass to go through like all the shit that Star Wars turned out, because like you said, there's always something cool that is really cool about these new shows and movies. Like for example, Acolyte, terrible, just fucking bad. But you have the cool Sith Lord, with the cool armor, the cool helmet, and having the cool kung fu shit, being a goddamn beast, taking on 8 Jedi. That was badass as fuck. But the rest of it was terrible. Parker recently showed me the chanting scene, and it was 8 minutes of that shit.
Oh yeah. You showed me that too.
It's really bad. But I feel like the biggest difference between a lot of like the new Star Wars that we're getting and the old is that while we had a lot of issues that we talked about like Revenge of the Sith, it's still, while rushed and, having some issues with dialogue, it's both fun and a compelling story. Like, in the broad scope of the story, it's strong. It needed more time to develop a lot of these things, to watch, Anakin fall a little slower. But a lot of the newer Star Wars, especially like the shows, end up feeling pointless. Like Kenobi, for example. We end in the same spot that we started. Nothing of importance really felt like it changed. If we remove that series, I don't feel like we got that much out of it. Like, I know I keep going back to the Clone Wars. I feel like the Clone Wars added a lot of context that services Revenge of the Sith. Don't feel like a lot of the Star Wars content we're getting services the movies
Or anything for that
tells
matter.
compelling stories on their own.
Minus Andor. Haven't seen
Minus
Andor.
Andor's really
I
good.
hear really good things about Andor, yes. But for the most part, like the most popular ones that I hear are, it's like Mandalorian, the Book of Boba Fett, Acolyte. I mean, we could fucking do a whole nother podcast about the fucking sequel trilogy.
No, I'm good.
He said
I'd rather
no.
not. I don't really want to watch them again, so I'd rather not.
Yeah.
Seeing the one time was good enough for me.
I mean, we wouldn't have to watch them. We could just complain about them, But yeah, it's like but my thing is like you look at this stuff like Mandalorian season 3, the Book of Boba Fett, the Obi-Wan show, Acolyte, and you just have to wonder that with a universe as large and expansive as Star Wars, how do they constantly keep missing these easy layups? Like, how do they consistently underdeliver on basic storytelling fundamentals? And why are they so dead set on trying to twist established characters into something different when the actors are like on their way out the door? Like, especially with Boba Fett, dude.
Yeah.
Well, I think a lot of it is just the nature of big company media right now. It is, this was popular, make a story about it. It'll sell because people like the character. So they'll come watch it. And it's just a never ending, like there's so many Star Wars shows. I kept up with them for a while, but they stopped holding my interest and I just stopped caring because there was always a new one. Like between Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith, admittedly I was very young, but I don't think there was a lot of things happening aside from maybe books.
No. I watched a video about this not that long ago. there was like maybe a handful of shows that came out between like 2004 and like 2008, around the time those movies were being filmed. Whereas now, right, I think there's like 8 or 10 shows that came out in the last 5 or 10
Well,
years.
Revenge of the Sith was 05, so if it was 2004 to 2008, that's like
Well, 'cause
post everything.
The Clone Wars came after, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
So-
it came after, so that's post everything.
Yeah, there wasn't really much.
It-
It's just
It feels like every fucking season there's a new show.
yeah, like what the fuck is the Bad Batch? Like I what does that do for the greater context of the story besides here's a ragtag tag group of fucking failed clones and they have
Okay,
all
but-
cool quirks. They're cool
Yeah.
in the context, but I don't need a goddamn show about them surviving Order 66. Like, what does that do for the Star Wars universe besides saying, "Hey, these guys survived it"?
I don't think everything needs to service the overall universe if it tells compelling stories in its own
Eh,
thing. It can be compelling. It was not as strong as Clone Wars
and Cad Bane's there too.
for some
Cad Bane.
reason.
Cad
I'm-
Bane, you love Cad Bane.
It was cool to see him,
love Cad
but
Bane. It
yeah,
was
there's
cool
no
to see
reason.
him, but I don't
There's no reason for him
care
to be
for
there.
that part. Yeah, I don't care for like random cameos just
Cameos.
for it. But I do think the Bad Batch could have I don't think it's that bad. I enjoyed it.
It's fine.
You could
It-
definitely
it-
argue.
it's a very character centric. It doesn't serve
Yeah.
the greater universe, but it focuses on
I-
like a group
I-
of characters.
I'm much but the thing is, it's like, what the fuck happened? Like, it's so weird and alienating where it's like, yeah, we have this group of clones that appeared in like 2 episodes of the final season. We have to, you guys, we have to maximize those models. How can we do it? I
Yeah,
have an
does-
idea.
It doesn't feel like they needed a whole show, right?
No,
they
probably
They could have
So-
had an episode in the final season of the Clone Wars or whatever,
Mhm.
They had 2 episodes, I believe. It was
Yeah.
like 2
Yeah,
different.
and that's all
I
it
think they
needed to
got, like,
be.
But
Did they got 2
but-
or 3 seasons run? I think.
but guys, we need to maximize those models. We didn't do this for nothing. We need to get return.
Yeah,
of
we
models.
made unique models for these clones. We got to get
So
our
we
use out of
gotta
them.
use them.
It does
Let's
feel
not
like
talk
that.
about Rebel. Yeah, that had to be what it
Oh,
was.
also, like, you want to talk
And
about
Boba Fett.
you want to talk about inconsistency though? How about talking about how Darth Maul died against Obi-Wan at the end of Rebels, but then you see him at the end of the fucking Han Solo movie?
dude, I remember telling you guys about this, but I want to tell it for the audience. Yeah, my family went to see the Han Solo movie, and me and my brother would watch the Clone Wars, so we knew that Darth Maul was still alive at this point. My dad is an old Star Wars head, but he only watches the movies. At the end of the credits, my dad was visibly, or apparently, according to my brother, was so goddamn confused of why the fuck Darth Maul was there. So it's so weird because they have like these cameos of like characters from like the Clone Wars appear in live action, and if you're like an old person who's only watching the movies, it's going to be so goddamn jarring seeing like
Didn't he
Ahsoka
die
Tano.
in like 2001, motherfucker?
Yeah, and my dad was like, "How the fuck is he alive? Is he a clone?" And Grayson, my brother, was like, "No, he was actually alive the entire time." And my dad's like, "Well, that's stupid," and not like watching the context of it. Being told, you're like, "What the fuck is that?" Or an acolyte where they have Darth Plagueis hiding in the caves. Like most people would be like, "Who the fuck is this?" Like if you're like watching the shows and not reading like the books or anything, you're gonna be like, "Who the fuck is this?" So Star Wars has this weird thing of like introducing characters, like obscure characters into the into reality of like these movies, and no one knows who the fuck they are.
But then the movies, like there's this disconnect between like the other like material that was written by like Dave Filoni and stuff, and what happens like in the movies. Like it's like there's no internal consistency, and because of that, when you say stuff like, well, Darth Maul got like a half spider body and then got robot legs, and he stayed alive by being so angry, like this just sounds stupid.
Yeah, it sounds dumb as hell. Or imagine this. Imagine you never watch Mandalorian, and you hear there's gonna be a Boba Fett show, and then you watch it, and it's not because imagine a Boba Fett show. It's going to be about him being a bounty hunter.
Oh,
back
that
in
guy
the
from
day.
the movie from back in the 70s, dude.
Yeah, and then you're gonna be like, oh wait, he survived the Sarlacc pit. What?
And then
What
he's
the
also
fuck
like a
happened?
completely different character now.
Yeah, it's just
Yeah,
wildly different.
Yeah, so like there's these. I just don't understand. I understand why it's because it makes money and it has the soy jack fucking meme pointing at the
Boba Fett.
screen. Oh, it's Boba Fett. Oh, I knew he was alive. Oh, dude, this is hype as fuck. And he kills Cad Bane. And imagine that. Imagine watching the Boba Fett show and you've never seen Clone Wars and you see Cad Bane. You're like,
Who the fuck is this blue guy?
Yeah. I watched where you be stick your nose in.
That was the voice actor did a pretty good job though.
He did, but I like.
See, okay, you can totally argue that the stuff that I mentioned in the beginning, like Luke pulling up or Obi-Wan and Vader's rematch, to just be like nostalgia baiting, and I couldn't really argue against that, right? But
Right.
Honestly, some of that to me is okay as long as it feels appropriate. Like, because those moments, while made to elicit the soy jack response, right, are still really, really cool, like by themselves when you look
They're
at it.
really well.
And
Here's the thing.
It makes sense when it's in the right context. Like Cad Bane and Boba Fett makes sense. They have history. Or
No,
like,
they don't. No, they Parker. No, they fucking
they
don't.
do.
No,
Well, they kinda
no,
do.
you. No,
I
no. They
thought-
have
okay.
They have one fucking scene together in Clone Wars, and then they have deleted scenes together in episodes that never released. No one would
They have
ever.
they have deleted scenes.
They
But
have,
also-
but
they-
you know this. I know this. Most people don't know.
But also, more importantly, they're both bounty hunters. Was the other
They're-
thing I was going to get at.
No one would gather. They'd be like, okay, the galaxy's big. I guess that makes sense. It's like, oh, they have beef. And it's like, okay, well, why do they have beef? Oh, well, you have in the Clone Wars. There's going to be this whole episode about Cad Bane and Boba Fett dueling, having a fucking Western duel, and both of them shooting each other in the goddamn head. That's why Boba Fett has the dent in his fucking helmet, and Cad Bane has the whole thing covering up his head.
Yeah,
because
see,
he
what
got
you're
his
saying
fucking
sounds
sword.
fucking stupid right now.
I know, because
Yeah.
that's what it is. That's what it is. It's so dumb. And I fucking hate Star Wars. Be like, well, you have to understand the deleted scene, guy. If you go ahead and watch.
Look, if you read the extended universe material, okay, Luke Skywalker actually reformed the entire Jedi Order. See, that's the thing. That's why for so long, I held the belief, honestly, that like Star Wars was kind of slop. And now I don't feel that way anymore. But I think it's because of stuff like this, you know, where it's like, well, actually, in this TV show written by another guy, Darth Maul actually survived, and he lived all the way up until the events of the Empire. Oh, also, Grievous and Kenobi fought each other multiple times, even though in the movie he introduces himself to him like he's never seen him before.
He was just introducing himself to Anakin.
What about Obi-Wan and Anakin fighting Dooku again in the Clone Wars, and then when they see him
Multiple
again,
times, yeah.
and then when they see him again, he goes, "Oh, I'm stronger since the last time we met." It's like, well, that wasn't that long ago.
That was like
actually,
2 weeks ago, bro.
Anakin,
You really got.
that was 2 weeks ago. You have a brain trauma.
See, and then you have to try and kind of cope with it and explain to yourself how all of this shit makes sense. And at the end of the day, it just doesn't. It just doesn't, and it's so hard to buy into that. And
Well,
that's why
actually-
it's just hard for me to like fully get into Star Wars. It's because so much of it is just like you just came up with some stupid shit on the playground.
It literally does feel like that, like when you're play fighting, you know, with like imaginary lightsabers, and you cut your friend's arm. He's like, "No, you cut it right here on you cut my forearm, not up my wrist completely."
But I had
I'm
a
still
superpower
moving
that let me regrow my arms.
the arm.
You
Yeah,
know,
that's
like he's making it up on the spot. You know, that's how it feels.
That's what
Yeah.
Star Wars it pretty much is. It's
It-
like, well, actually,
it definitely kind of is because it doesn't have a well-defined magic system.
No, they
Like
just
a
add
lot
shit
of
whenever they
things,
feel like
they
it.
just add it when they feel like the force speed they did in episode 1.
Yeah, Phantom Menace.
I never fucking knew that was force speed forever. I think until we were talking, because I just never acknowledged. I was like,
They
that was
only
weird
do it
editing.
the one time.
And they don't talk about it. I was like, that's a weird edit. I thought that was just a weird editing until you mentioned that it was force speed.
You know, guys, I think we should really talk about the sequel movies and force healing and force projection. You know, because those
Would've
were
helped.
such great ideas too.
Would have
And-
fucking helped.
force
Anakin might not have
possession.
turned.
and force possession. let's not forget that where Sidious becomes all the Siths in one person.
What did Leia do when she what did she do when she kept herself alive in space? Didn't that have a name or something?
I don't know. She just
It's
fucking flew. It was a miserable scene.
It's Force Stance 32. She made a force field out of the Force energy to stop the whole crystallization from her freezing in space.
I'm
That is
like
how she
getting
survived.
mad listening to you try and explain.
No.
The
I'm not.
problem is I
I'm
can't
not- I'm making
tell
that
if you're
up.
bullshitting me or
I'm
not.
bullshit-
And
I'm
that's the
bullshitting.
problem.
I know that you are, but it sounds as real as anything else that we've been talking about.
You've been saying all the stupid bullshit.
Well, Mace Windu force crushed his lungs, but then that actually didn't happen in the real Clone Wars cartoon, and he just had the cough the whole time.
It happened because of convenience. General Grievous was on a good day, not coughing until they met each other. Ugh, I love Star Wars.
Oh man.
Okay. Well, I think we've completed our goal of making another community of people really mad at us. So, with that being said, I think we've been going for almost an hour and a half now. I think it's time to move into the question. So, since you've come back from your break, Chandler, do you want to start us off with a question that you had in mind?
Yeah, absolutely. What, in true honesty, besides games and besides TV shows, what could they do? I mean, it's an easy question to be like, oh, well, just make good movies. But what honestly, what could they do to get people interested back into Star Wars? And like, what is the one thing? What is that?
Like what do you like? Okay, like a project they could do that you think would be like a okay. Yeah, so
Yeah,
anything's
something-
on the table, right? Like games, shows, movies.
Yeah, I would probably say like leaning towards movies just because
That would reach a wider
it's like-
audience for sure. Yeah.
that reaches a
Yeah.
wider audience. And like, do they go with the Old Republic to get people familiar with it? Because to me, that is the most interesting
That is
part.
kind of my initial thought as well, but I think Parker should take this one because I think I need a sec to think about it.
I mean, the Old Republic is an easy answer. Having a cool live action of that would be cool. But honestly, anything that's in its own time period, there are so many throwaway lines they've made throughout infinite Star Wars content that they could just go develop and make a story in. And I think the main thing that they need to do for any big project is just go back to the roots and remember the basic hero's journey. That's all the original trilogy was. It was the hero's journey. And I think that's really all Star Wars needs to maybe have a comeback. Just remember the classic hero's journey and remember to have your actors learn basic choreography for fighting.
And maybe spend like more than $25 on the costume set,
Yeah, that
Maybe
would
don't
be
make
cool
everybody look
too.
stupid all the time.
Yeah, that'd be cool too.
I think it's difficult because Star Wars is in a position in which it's not being held by the guy who created it anymore, and so there's a lot more fingers in the pie now. They tried to do a sequel trilogy, which started off kind of promising, but then there was the shit with the directors and egos and stuff and all that, which is what I was trying to say earlier, and those completely ended up falling apart. So in my mind, right, if we were living in the best possible timeline, we would get one new movie, right? Maybe it has sequels, maybe it doesn't. That's not the point, though. We get one new movie with some, like Parker said, you can go back to that original structure of what made those original movies so captivating, with the basic hero's journey and just the world that Star Wars is, right? Because there's so much you can do, even if they stayed in the current time period of this like kind of weird post-Empire stuff that they're doing, right, with the Mandalorian and all that. That there are like infinite ideas, practically. So you just potentially need a group of focused people to write a concise story, maybe with some new characters, right? Because so much of the issue is that they crutch on nostalgia and stuff that Lucas made, right? I mean, with the fucking sequel movies, you had Palpatine coming back and all that, and that was just heinous as fuck. Even though Ian McDermott still tried his best to put in a good performance. But yeah, I would say one movie you could put it in the time place of the Old Republic or something like that. Maybe make it animated. I don't think that's a crazy idea, right? Animated movies have seen lots of success with things like Spider Verse, shows like Arcane and things of that nature, right? So maybe the format doesn't exactly need to be a movie, but I think that would reach the widest audience, right? And that would get the most amount of people excited. But whatever you make needs to be able to stand on its own. You don't need to have Palpatine come back. You don't need to have Mark Hamill CGI'd to look younger, right? I said that part was cool, but you don't need it to write a well-established story. And I think Andor proves that, because a lot of people say that the reason they like Andor so much is because it has that logical consistency that we've been complaining about for the past hour and a half. So that would be my answer. My question would be, despite the numerous flaws that the series has that we've been picking apart, right? Why does Star Wars still matter to you? And I guess, does Star Wars still matter to you?
What a fucking question.
That's a goddamn question.
I think it does still matter to me. I stopped caring about a lot of the new stuff, but I mean, I've played every fucking class storyline in the MMO that they had, the SWOTOR, and I've watched every movie like multiple times. It could just be nostalgia. It could just be that it's, part of my childhood, something I grew up with, and it's important simply for that reason. I mean, but I think it's hard to fully put into words, but Star Wars to me is just fun, and it's got just a lot of cool ideas, cool characters, and it's just a universe that can expand and can do a lot of fun things with. And it's all, I mean, like I said, it's just fun. It's a lot of the best of Star Wars is just having fun with it.
See. And what about you, Chandler?
Star Wars has been a part of my life for the mass majority of it. I have two parents that, at their age, being young, saw Star Wars for the I remember, growing up during the prequel trilogies, my dad buying the action, just collecting them, just having them in a fucking box, getting like every single one that he possibly could. If you had, because you have my parents who like Star Wars before me, because they grew up with the original trilogy, and I grew up with prequels, and then me going to say like, oh, my favorite Star Wars movies are the prequels, for better or worse. And there's things I can draw from Star Wars for, inspiration, like the Mandalorians. They're cool guys. You guys know me. You guys, I love me some dudes in badass armor wearing helmets 24/7. I love that shit. That's up my alley. And it probably started from the Mandalorians because they're so goddamn cool. It's just hard to care about Star Wars still when all the rest that I like is all the old shit, the stuff that I grew up with, and then everything now, it just upsets me, and I get to see 8 minutes of the acolyte chanting going on, knowing that's what it is. So it's hard for me to look forward to the future of Star Wars, knowing that mass majority is going to be acolyte chanting 8 minutes, and them fucking up the lore of like a bleeding the lightsaber, where the evil girl got super mad and the blue lightsaber turned red instead of like her torturing and shit. So it's like, if they don't care about it as much as I care about it, then why should I keep caring about it? Why should I look forward to new
Mm.
projects when all this shit that I'm going to see is shit? A while back ago, I don't know how many years ago, I heard rumors that they're going to be focusing on the Old Republic, and I was so goddamn excited. I was like, "Oh my god, this is great. This is going to fix Star Wars." And I think this was during the time like the last of the new sequel trilogy movies were going to end, and it turns out it's going to be a goddamn book. Like, how the fuck am I like? Why? I could watch YouTube videos about the Old Republic. Why do I want to read a goddamn book? If you guys are not giving a fuck about it, and you're just saying, "Oh, this is going to be a book," they're hyping up as like a big Star Wars project. Writing like books are a big project for whoever's developing it, but for the matter, for the wider audience, most people are not going to read the goddamn book. They're going to want to see it visually. They, either through a show or through a movie or playing a game.
I think that's fair.
Yeah, that's what it
Fair.
is. It's just that if they don't care about it as much as I do, or if they don't care, then why should I care? All the shit that's going to be continuing to be deuced out is going to be bad, and I don't see a better trajectory of that. At least I have all my old shit that I could still enjoy.
Yeah. I mean, I I can't really blame you for feeling that way. I mean, that's a brutally honest take, but it's like I'm not going to sit here and tell you that's incorrect because yeah, a lot of the stuff that's been coming out is very like logically inconsistent and doesn't seem to respect much of its source material, right? Stuff just kind of goes against pre-established stuff at a whim for the sake of whoever's writing it having the convenience that their story needs for it to progress.
Yeah,
But
I've
so
ungodly hours into Star Wars content, and even I don't care about the new shit anymore. I've stopped keeping up with most of what they release.
yeah, and I do think that's a fair perspective to have, honestly. I guess to kind of answer my own question a little bit though, just because I was thinking about it a lot after watching the movie. I think Star Wars still matters in the sense that its place in history and pop culture, science fiction, movies, will remain important until the end of time. I think that's just a fact. It's so unfortunate to see that they have taken a lot of these new shows in directions where they want to twist these characters to be completely different than what they were and not respect the source material that they were based on. But there was potential, you know? Mandalorian season 1 was great. It was. The potential for a show about Boba Fett is great, right? I mean, you could, even if it was like a prequel and it wasn't like him escaping the Sarlacc pit or whatever, you could have had stuff from in between when Jango Fett died in the fucking Coliseum all the way up until Empire Strikes Back, whenever he comes in, you know? A show exploring stuff that happened to Obi-Wan in between then and now. You could have done his training as a Force ghost. You know, there was so many avenues for different things that people want to see. And all hope is not lost because there is Andor. And I haven't seen Andor personally. I don't think either of you have either. But all I hear is good stuff. And I think most of what I hear is that it's good because it follows a logical consistency and it focuses on a small group of characters in a more isolated setting that is separated from all the strings of dealing with like the Jedi, the Sith, where everybody was at this place in time in the movies, the lore, you know. It's just if they could hone in and focus on tight-knit stories in this universe that still holds people's interest to this day, you know, a series that started back in like 1977. There is so much possibility, and it is just really upsetting that it's not being capitalized on because they make all these shows, but they don't explore the aspects that people fell in love with. They want to twist it and do their own thing with it. But if you can't pay respect to that source material, then you don't deserve to write stories within it. But at the end of the day, I still think Star Wars matters. I think this movie proves that, especially because people came out in force to watch the movie again. Battlefront 2 on Steam just hit a new peak player count like 2 weeks ago.
True. Very true.
2 weeks ago. So people still care, man. People still like Star Wars. Star Wars is still cool. It still matters, and its place in history can never be forgotten. It's just it needs to be handled by somebody that cares. And under Disney, it's fair to say I think that might just not be possible. But with stuff like Andor, that, maybe it is. So it's kind of uncertain. I hope to see more good stuff in the future, because it would be really cool for Star Wars to get a more positive reception, because especially since those sequel movies, they've just been fumbling ever since those, man. The Mandalorian was like this cool start of like a new TV show type thing. I remember people getting really excited about that when I was talking about people like at work and stuff. But then they managed to fuck it up. So
Fucked it up with season 2.
it's hard to
Yeah,
know where
season
to
2.
place your faith, but there's potential. It can be done.
I think an aspect that they need to explore, and I know they're really not for movie wise, is that people, what sells tickets is seeing the cool lightsabers. And what was super interesting to me about the Mandalorian series was the fact that you're not going to have the Force and the lightsaber, but then they brought Baby Yoda. And Andor, look at Andor. Correct me if I'm wrong. There's no Force wielders in Andor at all.
No, I
I
don't
have
believe
not seen
so.
season 2, but I have seen season 1, and no, there is not any force wielders. There was
They're just a
no
bunch of prisoners like in an imperial prison, right?
mm, that is part of it. I don't want to spoil Andor because it's very good, but there is some time that they're that. It's more like a spy show, I think, is the quickest and easiest way to say it without getting into any kind of spoilers.
I think that's like a good like thing for it to be, like a detached almost separate genre of a thing that still takes place in the Star Wars universe. That's kind of what I was trying to get at.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's what I was getting to with Mandalorian. My hopes was it was going to be detached. It was going to be about the second coolest aspect of Star Wars, the Mandalorians. But then we got Baby Yoda.
And then it kind of
But
fell into being more about that, right?
yeah, it's like it's called the Mandalorian. Why is he not acting like the Mand? I mean, yeah, he does the Mandalorian things, but why the fuck is it Baby Yoda?
Yeah, when I first started watching it, I was really hoping it, and I liked the first season, but I was really
Yeah.
hoping that it would just stick with the he does jobs, he does occasionally he'll get like big overarching ones, but that he just was like a almost monster of the week-esque, where it's like this is your bounty of the week. This is
And
what
all
you're
honesty,
after.
and one thing I do like about Star Wars that I wish they would explore more is like the Western aspects.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like, definitely one of my favorite recent scenes from a new Star Wars show, albeit it's not very fantastic, was the fight between Obi-Wan
And Vader,
and Darth Vader.
the
And
rematch.
you have the rematch in the very beginning. You have this very well done orchestra that is very heavily inspired by Western um, spaghetti films and awesome choreography, fantastic. Can I get more Star Wars and Western shit put together? You had it very close with Mandalorian with the introduction. Still
And the
comes to my
music.
pants. Yeah,
Music's
still comes
always
to my pants when I watch the intro of Mandalorian or listen to it.
Yeah. We've been going on for a little over an hour and a half at this point. It's like 1:38, so I don't want to make a super long episode. I feel like we could definitely keep going about Star Wars for
Yeah.
much longer,
Mhm.
but I think this is probably a good place to cap it off since we've kind of concluded our discussion of the movie at this point. But before we close it out, just overall thoughts on Revenge of the Sith upon this viewing with context so much later in life.
I mean, I loved it as a kid, and I still love it now.
I love this movie as I love Spider-Man 3. Is it the greatest film of all time? No. Is it a good film? Not really, but it's my movie.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I kind of feel a similar way. Um, I mean, like I said, the movie's full of quotables. Like I can name like 10 off the top of my head. It's got a lot of my favorite scenes from Star Wars stuff, and I think overall it's my most it's the most enjoyable movie to watch. Just as like a, just throw it on kind of thing. The original trilogy definitely had a much stronger story and characters, I think, but the prequels, for what they were overall, um, still represent just like a cool part of Star Wars to me. A part where I can still look at it and be like, man, that's really cool, even despite its flaws.
Right.
With that, I'm gonna go ahead and say, please check us out on Spotify. Leave a comment down below if you want to be part of the discussion. If you felt any certain kind of way about our opinions, I encourage you to share your own in the comments. Next time, we're gonna be talking about Elden Ring Night Reign. Best believe there are some thoughts to be had about that one. Yeah,
That gives us a deadline. We have to beat the last 3 bosses.
well, it's only 2 for me, but
Well,
Uh,
you beat who did you beat?
like, don't worry about that. We'll talk about that next time.
Yeah.
Uh,
All right.
Thank you all for tuning in. If you have indeed made it this far, thank you to Parker for joining us on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks again for having me.
Yeah, we definitely enjoyed having you. We hope to have you back again soon for perhaps another episode that involves giant space battles. But we'll leave that till later.
We'll get there when we get there, all right?
We'll get there when we get there. We'll see y'all later. Goodbye.
Bye.